So I'm muting.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I hope you're all doing well, inshallah. We'd like to welcome you to the first episode of my podcast. And this is an initiative that we've started to ignite conversations about mental health, things like career and finance, self-building. And we want to have these conversations with each other, with our families, and we want to have these conversations with the greater community as well. So getting right into it, the topic that we will be covering today is domestic abuse and mental health. This is a topic which is very sensitive in its nature, so viewer discretion is advised. So the host of this topic will be myself, Brother Azhar Mazhar and Brother Nabil Hasnain. And we have a very special guest with us today. Her name is Sr Sukaina Bhojani. And she's a registered psychotherapist and a counselor as well. She has a lot of experience working with those who suffer from addictions and mental health. So I want to get started right away by asking her, first of all, what exactly is domestic abuse?
So when we think of domestic abuse, we want to think of patterns of behavior which is used basically to control and have power over a woman. This could be in physical form, emotional, psychological, financial, and sexual. So it's a broad range of things that we're talking about right now. We also want to understand that it can happen to anybody and any time. So we cannot say, oh, it's only prevailing in less educated class or a particular group of the community. It's across gender, it's across socioeconomic status, ethnicity, status, whether refugee, immigrant, citizens. It doesn't matter. It's across all races, all education levels, all financial status. It can be a single event and it could be a repetitive cyclic behavior. So I want you to think about in terms of, is a woman being hurt physically, like is she being hit or slapped or pushed? That's domestic violence. Is her money being controlled? Does she have to disclose what she's making, which account she's doing her saving? That's domestic violence. Is she being stopped from meeting her family or her friends or her loved ones? Comes under the heading of domestic violence. Is she being forced to have a relationship without her consent? Domestic violence. Is she being demeaned? Has some meaning hurtful words being used for her? That's domestic violence. That's emotional abuse, actually. Is she being not allowed to make her own decisions, her choices in terms of her money, in terms of relationship, in terms of career choices? Everything would come under the heading of domestic violence, actually.
So a couple of things is that just domestic abuse, you're saying that it's not just particularly about gender, but we're talking a lot about women. Is there a reason why women is the topic that you chose to sort of emphasize on? Is it because of the fact that there's a higher case with them rather than domestic abuse that happens with, for example, the others, like the spouse, that the male as well in the relationship, or for example, towards the parents or the children?
That's right. And women, according to stats, more women have come out with concerns of domestic violence. And women has domestic violence, again, women is very important because mostly kids are associated with her. So if she's at risk, that means her kids are also at risk. So this is why we try to talk more about violence for women and to empower her, or at least do awareness about resources that could be used so that she could save herself and her kids. Another important reason is we know that domestic violence can run into generations. So if a child is witnessing domestic violence at his or her house, very high chances that that kid, when it takes up a role in his own family, would use that abuse, because that abuse is an okay behavior. So this is why it's very important that we educate women about it. We develop that awareness so that if that behavior is happening in the house, she can save herself, or at least help the kid not to repeat that behavior in future relationships.
So you talked a little bit about the intergenerational trauma that occurs with domestic violence and how it gets passed on to the children. A child who sort of views their parents abusing one another, right? What are some of the repercussions that that child goes through later on in the future? I know you said that the child repeats the behavior, but is there any traumatic, or is there any like post-traumatic stress disorder that the child goes through later on in life?
Yes, different people react differently to this situation. I have worked with a lot of clients who have presented with anxiety and depression because they saw a lot of conflicts in their house, both physical and emotional. I've also worked with clients who have dealt with lack of self-esteem, lack of confidence, people who have ability to form relationships because they have never seen two people in a cordial relationship. So they don't know how to make friends. They don't know how to stay in their own relationships. They don't have the ability to trust others. Then of course, stealing, those overt behaviors, stealing, getting involved in drugs, getting in trouble with the police and again because fighting is so normal, they would just go on the street and fight with anybody XYZ and get in trouble with the law. So those overt behaviors, and then obviously flashbacks, anxiety, dreams, depression, anxiety, PTSD, if it's very extreme, PTSD, drugs, all kind of substance use in order to heal yourself, in order to numb yourself. Yeah, it's everything that I've seen.
Earlier, you mentioned in your definition that you were speaking essentially about the different, I suppose, categories of women, right? So all statuses, all kind of races and ethnicities go through this, right? It's found in everywhere, essentially. So the question I had pertaining with the ethnicity in particular, and because obviously, as we know, our community is generally comprised of individuals from the subcontinent. So I was wondering, in your experience, have you seen more cases of women from particular ethnicities? And if so, do you think you could speak a bit about why there is perhaps a discrepancy between the numbers of different ethnicities, of women of different ethnicities?
I wouldn't say that there is a discrepancy in the number. I have worked with everybody. I have worked with India, Pakistan, women from India and Pakistan, and women from European ethnicity, Canadian, Northern American, everybody. But to me, a lot of women come from India and Pakistan because I speak their language. I am from their culture, and I could relate to them more. So that is big of a lot of my clientele. However, the shelter that I provide mental health support has women from all backgrounds, all. I wouldn't say that any ethnicity or any cultural background would stand out.
Okay, so just moving that, I guess, topic along, would you say there is, as because you mentioned that there appears to be a general standard across the board with regard to ethnicity, right? So would you say there is a sort of stigma in the subcontinent culture with regard to speaking out against acts of domestic violence?
I would say a lot. And this is the biggest reason why a lot of women from our community, when I say community at large, India, Pakistan, they don't come out and seek support because the stigma is huge. There is a huge element of judgment. So the minute a woman stands up, everybody is set against her. Because see, this is how our society is formed. There are certain values we hold on to. First of all, marriages are very important. Marriages are forever. If it breaks, it's the woman's responsibility in most of the cases. Then we assume that only a woman is responsible to hold a family together and to look after her children. So how many times have we heard that if a woman is complaining about some kind of issues in a relationship, we would tell her to be patient because she needs to consider her kids. She needs to think about her kids and their future.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
This is one of the biggest factor. So it becomes a taboo when she comes out and say, oh, he's abusing me physically or he's abusing me emotionally. even if she says physically, sometimes we would listen, but if she comes out with emotional abuse and financial abuse, that's not really a big deal, because we don't care about emotions. We are programmed to talk about successes, cognition, achievements, goal, money. We are never programmed to talk about our emotions and our feelings. That has to be in a private conversation in our bedrooms, in our small corners. It doesn't have to be discussed in public. So there is no room, there is no space. It's a kind of a taboo topic. And then historically, if we look at the history, men, it's supposed to be somebody who is omnipotent, who is able to do everything, who is in control, who is in power. Although in Northern American culture where we live, half of the women are in workforce. They are contributing equally in the house in all aspects, running the house, either financially, either taking care of the kids. So they are taking equal responsibility. Yet in our heads, men are omnipotent. They have the power and control. So if a woman stands up, everybody is like, what is going on? What is your problem? Why can't you be patient?
Right. It's out of the ordinary.
Yeah. So
now, a question that I have, actually, sorry, a question that I have is that I think a lot of the times, from a man's perspective, I guess, is that we're sort of given a guide in regards to how we're supposed to function as a person of the house, in a sense, right? So there, in that guide, I feel like due to distortion, because of the jokes that people crack or whatever it is, what ends up happening is I don't think men are actually taught how to actually treat their wives in a proper manner. So now the question comes, domestic abuse, is this something that is done intentionally or without even reason, right? So that's the question that I have, is like, when you see all these cases, are most of these cases done where the spouse is actually committing these acts of abuse on an intentional level, or is it doing it because they don't know any better? And if that's the case, how do we educate these people who don't know any better? And if it is the case that it's intentional, then obviously the solution is there for them, right?
And that's a very good question. It could be overt and it could be covert. It could be intentional and it could be unintentional. So let's say somebody who has witnessed their father demeaning or hurting or calling names to his mother all throughout his childhood has just learned that pattern. That is an okay behavior. So if he repeats the same behavior in front of his wife or to his wife, he would never realize that something is wrong.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is just an okay norm. This is how women have been treated, right? So in that case it's unintentional, but then other time people would do it intentionally because they think that they are powered, they are omnipotent, they are in charge of the house, and women needs to be in control. And how do you keep her in control? When you just abuse her, when you demean her, when you call her name, when you take away her authority from her. So that's a way you control her, and therefore you maintain your power. So it could be either way. How do we do that? We start from our homes. We start treating our females in the house gently, nicely, with respect. Model those behavior to your children so that they learn those patterns and take it forward in their own relationships. It starts with your own house. And then conversations like this, when we start saying, hey, when you call her names in public, this is domestic abuse. When you control her cell phone and you check her messages, this is domestic abuse. We would say, oh, we just saw her message once because it was just buzzing, so I was getting irritated. I'm sorry, it's her property, right? Similarly, it's her money. She gets to decide how much shopping is she doing, where is she saving that money, how much is she sharing with her parents. That's none of your business. If she shares with you, well enough. If she doesn't, you got to respect that is her space and her choice and her decision. So this is a conversation we need to start talking about.
Now, there's another question in regards to this. Is that we've been talking about like the male being almost like the aggressive one in this equation, in a sense, right? Now, in terms of like, let's bring it from the other end, where if, for example, the female is the one that's actually causing the issues, and because the male does not know how to actually deal with the female, like, for example, doing things that are not correct, maybe abusing the parents, or I don't know what it could be, but multiple different things. But she might be doing something that might not be maybe considered as domestic abuse in that umbrella, but it's actually causing some sort of emotional stress or whatever it is to the male, and the male does not know how to deal with it. So now the initiator of this whole situation is the female. Now, when that's the situation, how do the males deal with a troublesome wife, for example?
It's true. It works either way. We are not saying that only men are to be blamed in every situation. It's
Yeah.
that it takes two to tango, or
Yeah, exactly.
we're saying that it always starts with a conversation. Hey, this is how I feel about the behavior. It's either way. Either it's men or women. It starts with a conversation. See, this is how I feel about the behavior. This is my space. This is how I feel things needs to be taken care of, and a conversation about this thing. About it, so at least we know that we have put forward our request and how we feel about it. Taking action directly without letting the partner know what the concern is not justified, right? So a conversation, if the conversation doesn't work, we get friends and family involved, like immediate, very trusted one. Hey, can you help us mediate? Can you help us solve? Next level, we go to a community seniors. Can you help us mediate? Can you help us resolve? And then there are resources like marriage counseling, arbitration, mediation, those kind of resources, which is available and professionally done in the community, right? Or so there are certain steps we need to follow before we take any drastic measure, either way, either in men and women.
Yeah.
And of course, sorry, were you going to say something? I didn't want to cut you off.
No.
Yeah, so just keeping the ball rolling. On the point of individuals who are in this situation, right? And they might be our friends or family or even people we know, our colleagues perhaps. What are some indications that we can kind of perhaps acquaint ourselves with, so that if for example these indications appear in an individual who's close to us, we are able to, for example, be of assistance to them, essentially.
But at the same time, we're also concerned about the fact that if I see someone having that domestic abuse happening to them, do I want to get myself involved in that, or do I feel that this is a personal issue, right? Because I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm getting involved and then both of them turn around to me going like, this is not your problem, right? Yeah, exactly. So where do we put ourselves? Like,
it depends on, I guess, what, I don't know, Sr Sukaina might know better. I guess what type of relationship you have with that person, first of all, and then maybe like providing them with like the resources that Sr Sukaina told us about, saying like, okay, I know there might be something wrong here, or there might be signs of something wrong. Here are some resources that you might be able to use, in a sense, right?
That's true. It depends on the severity of the situation. So if my neighbor is being hurt and I can hear that that's sitting in my house, I am not gonna wait to talk to my neighbor or to wait to inform XYZ in the community. I'm picking up my phone and calling 911 because I feel that somebody is at risk. So if it is that level, the intervention has to be extreme too. However, let's say if it's a friend and I'm seeing, oh, okay, these two are just not getting along and there are some weird looks here and there, then depending on my relationship, I'm going to pull one of them in a corner and start talking about it. That, hey, I see something is off. Can I help? Right?
Some of them are just looking for an outlet, right? In a sense, nobody's really approached them, and they're afraid to approach people, in a sense, right? Because the stigma is there, especially, I guess you mentioned in our communities, right? The stigma is there for both ends. So a person, for example, myself, I'll be afraid to go to Azhar and say, I'm being domestically abused, or Azhar, and Azhar might cast judgment on me because this is happening to me, right? In a sense. So there's stigma from both sides. And the question I have, I guess, is how do we break those barriers, right? How do we break that barrier so people are more comfortable with coming up to, for example, their friends and saying, I'm going through this issue without fear of being judged?
This is when we start talking about it. Until a few years, we would never talk about mental health, anxiety, and depression. Now we do talk about it. We don't say it's our concern. We talk about, oh, the community is having a concern, so let's have a talk about it. So we start talking about it until we start talking about it over our dinner tables, over our parties, in our weddings, in our social circle. This is not going to be an okay topic to talk about. We need to start this conversation every time 4 or 5 people sit together. It just needs to be in discussion every time. Start with your kids in the house, make them aware of their rights, human rights, male right, female rights, a conversation, a word needs to be started. Now, when it comes to indicators, people would never come us to say, oh, I'm being domestically abused. Never in my so many years of experience, I work directly with a shelter. Never ever have somebody come up to say, oh, I'm being domestically abused. This word never comes out. They would give me small things. He's harassing me. He's following me. He calls me name. He controls all my money. I haven't been allowed to see my parents in a while. I wanted to go out with my friends. He would not let me go. There are so many Fridays I have not even left my house. I work 8 hours a day, my job. I come back home to a dirty house and then I cook and I clean and I drive my kids to appointment. So I'm working 16 hours every day. These are the things that you pick on. Never a woman would use the word domestic violence and nor a man would word domestic violence. And let me give you an example of a 22-year-old client I'm working with. This girl was dealing with intense violence. It was a sexual violence case. We connected her with the local shelters and local services, and she started talking about it. Conversations happened until we realized that what she was calling sexual abuse was actually sexual assault. Police got involved and the guy was actually charged. So a lot of people would never have those words and understanding. They would just give us indicators. It is our job as professionals to navigate through those indicators, come up with what is happening, and then direct them to the resources accordingly. This girl came from Pakistan. She knew nothing about it until we supported her. And now she's in therapy. She's doing wonders. She have a job. She's surviving in a new country on her own. So with support, things happen. And obviously, when she came out with all the concerns, do you think community was supportive of her?
No,
She got all sort of stones. She stood by her cause, right? I wish we would have supported her. Such a young girl, 22 years of age. I wish we would have supported her. I wish we would have not judged her. I wish we would have said, look, we believe in you. We trust you. Let me help you. What kind of help would you want? You tell us, we're going to go in that direction. Right? So the direction comes from her. We help her in that direction.
Like, what timelines do you think this is, like, in terms of like the change that we're asking for? We want to have some sort of timeline in regards to what you think will be an effective way to say this, like, our communities will actually start removing the stigma, right? So, like, in terms of like, can we say this is a generational timeline where basically the generation that's already here, we sort of lost that hope of like these people will change their mentalities and like, because usually this is like the thing that you'd hear is that the people who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, these people are not going to change, right? You just got to wait it out in a sense, right? But the people who are now, who understand this, these are the people who will change. My concern is that when we look at, for example, like domestic abuse and anything that's of this nature, where it's very serious, can we wait a whole generation? Can we not make that change now, right? Like, so what timelines do you expect? Do you think this is going to be a generational thing, or do you think this will change now?
Right now. I'm going to start with me, and I'm going to start with my kids. Right now. I cannot wait any longer, because the older our kids get, their beliefs gets firm. So we need to start this conversation today, right now, over our dinner tables. Our seniors, I wouldn't invest too much time in them. It's their beliefs are firm. There is an element of respect there. There is no point trying to make an effort to change them. Yes, we can start a conversation, we can start awareness, but there's no point to try to do a lot of things there. But the younger ones, us, and people who are coming after us really needs to talk about these things. A very good example, even at Al Mahdi Center, I've seen when Asad Bhai, he gives his lecture, he always dedicates some time to mental health. He tries to put that idea, even 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Every time when he keeps doing it, we are now trying, we have now started that conversation about mental health. People are coming forward and they're asking for help now, because little by little, that effort, those words are making sense to us. Right? So the conversation has to keep going every time we just have an opportunity, and it has to be done now with our kids. Role modeling, if they see their mom working 24/7 while the father is on his phone or waiting at the dinner table waiting for the food to be served, what is the message we're passing on? See, it has to start right now in our homes.
So coming from a little bit of a theoretical perspective, what are some interventions that you've used or you've seen other psychotherapists use that are successful in tackling somebody who's been the sort of victim of domestic abuse?
Very good question. Big or small,
Mm-hmm.
all she's asking is to listen to her story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just listen. Do not interfere. Listen to her words, listen to her body language, listen to her emotions, listen to what she has said and listen to what she has not said. Because they're going to say a lot between the lines. And we are only going to pick those things when we just listen wholeheartedly without bringing our experiences and our interjections forward. Listening is going to make so much difference, because this is where she's going to develop trust on us and went out and release her all trauma and all those stress that she is holding on to it. So listen to her story, believe in her story. Please do not say that you have been in that relationship for 10 years. Why didn't you come out earlier? Please do not say it. Nothing is more hurtful than this comment. Nothing is more hurtful. We don't know what happened in those 10 years. We don't know if she was trying to protect her child. We don't know if her father was ill. We don't know if she had any physical or mental health concerns. We know nothing of that story. How can we just say, why did you stay in 10 years? Why couldn't you stay another 10 years until he dies? Or why making those judgments? Like, who has given me that authority to be a judge in her situation? So please, no judgments. Just believe in her story, support her, encourage her that finally you are able to come out. You have gained that strength to disclose, and we value that strength. It takes a lot of courage to go and speak to somebody and share those horrific stories. And we also need to remember from a mental health perspective that when somebody starts narrating that story from a trauma perspective, they are reliving that story. So sharing the story has the same pain as if they are living that story.
Yeah.
So it's not easy to share emotionally, physically, and mentally. It drains somebody to share that story. So we need to listen with a lot of respect. We need to really encourage her and support her courage that she has survived all these years. There was definitely some strength and some resilience. This is why she was able to survive through. She was able to make through so many years. So we need to identify those strengths and build on those strengths, because those were the strengths that kept her going. Maybe it was a hope that, oh, she's going to return to her parents someday. Maybe it was her hope that she's going to provide a safe home to her children someday. Maybe it was a hope that she might be able to return back to her career someday. Whatever hope that she had, we need to build onto that hope, because now there's a long journey she needs to carry forward. She might have to get into a legal battle. She might have to go and stay in a shelter. She might have to be homeless for a while. We don't know what kind of journey they're going to have. So we need to build on those strengths and those resilience. Provide her reassurance that she is not alone. There are many people in the same boat, sailing in the same boat, and then try to make those linkages so that when she feels hurt, she has somebody to talk to, somebody who would share similar experience. So there is a sense of belonging. That sense of belonging really helps a lot. This is why people in shelter are very close friends to each other, because they have similar stories to share with each other. And there's no judgment, because they all have been through the same road. Yeah. Right? And then inform her about her legal options. Please give proper information. Don't say my auntie's first cousin's wife had the same thing and therefore she dealt with same thing. Please, proper channel. Either call a shelter, call 211, the city's line, call a crisis hotline. Get proper information. If nothing, the biggest help you are giving us to give her proper information. Your auntie's first cousin's daughter's neighbor is not, it's a YOI reference. I would never trust into those references. Safety planning is very important. Please consider that she might have small kids. She may need shelter right away. She may need money. She may need job in order to meet her financial needs. Therefore, we need to connect her with proper channels. We also need to consider that kids could be used as another means of abuse. So that guy might take away the kids, stop kids' money, stop child support, take away her medications, take away her medical information, her certificates and degrees, which she can use to find work. So a safety planning needs to be done as to how is she going to leave her house safely with her children. and where is she going to be. So good safety planning is very, very, very important in this case. We need to make sure that all her things are in place. So her passport, some money, some medication. So the 22-year-old girl I was talking about, she knew that it was coming at the point she would have to leave the house. So she, in her bag, had her passport, some money, her certificates, her medication already hidden inside a closet with a couple of clothes, that in case if it ever needs to happen, she would just pick that and leave. Emergency contact numbers like police and all that was very handy, so that she could use that right away. So yeah, so those kind of things. In terms of resources, because we live in Ontario, 211 is the best line. City, you call this number, city gives you exact information as to where can you get help, where is the shelter, whom do you call, legal aid, lawyers, they would give you exact help. There are a lot of hotlines where you can continuously talk to seek emotional support, as well as you can build your knowledge that in case if you were ever to leave the house or to call the police or to face your abuser directly, then what are the tools that you need to have with you to be prepared for those situations.
Now, I have a question in regards to this. I think that like it's really good information that you're giving us right now, like in terms of how to deal with these type of situations. Inshallah, no one will have to use this, but if they do, it's great information to have.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I have is, how would you actually rate the or review like these organizations that are here to help for someone who is of a minority, who's of Islamic background or Indo-Pakistani community or whichever community it is, but from an Islamic background? How accommodating are they to the like Muslim women? Number one. And like just like because the thing is, for example, like, and I think we'll branch off to this second topic that which is the domestic abuse for children, which I want to get into I think after this. But I think before we do that, it's just like even like just to give you an example, it's like you hear that whenever a kid has been abused or whatever, and like it could be like a slap or whatever it is. If for example they put the kid into a shelter, usually that kid's life it's not a good life afterwards, right? Most of the stories that we hear, or the kids that I've interacted with when I was in school, who've come from a shelter or from a foster home or whatever it is, those individuals they're extremely aggressive. They feels like their lives are completely screwed up because of the fact that this happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
So how is this the same with like how is this being dealt with on a female level? And then I think we should move on to the child abuse part of it at this point, because I think we're at the halfway mark as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. See, I work in Durham region. I know shelters in Durham region very well, and I know they're very accommodating. So, for example, if there's a Muslim women and Muslim kids, they would make sure that the food is halal.
Mm-hmm.
So, in that sense, they would go above and beyond to support you with your faith. However, when it comes to dealing, they're going to follow the Canadian law, right? Don't expect them to help you in Islamic manner. They're going to help you with the law allows them. So they're going to help you with your safety planning. They're going to help you finding an accommodation, because we all know that, or maybe we don't know that, if women come out saying that they have been abused, the city helps them to get safe housing fast. So normally the wait list in Toronto could go up to 25 years. In this case, 3 months to 4 months, and people would find safe housing with women and their children, right? So the shelter would accommodate everybody equally, despite your ethnic backgrounds, right? So that is a thing. Law supersedes everything. Everybody is treated equally in that sense. As far as talking about kids you have met who have dealt all sort of issues because they were picked by the Children's Aid Society or they were living in foster homes, I agree. You are taken out from your house. Yes, that place was not safe, but that father was yours, that mother was yours, that grandmother was yours. It was your place. Now they take you out of the situation and put you in a foster care whom you don't know. No matter how many good clothes they buy you, how many candies and pizza dinner they buy you, it's still a foreign land for them, and they're gonna react. Kids don't know how to say. So how to express emotions. So what would they do? They would fidget, they would fight, they would scream. And remember, these kids don't know how to make relationships. So in school, they would have all sort of trouble. domestic abuse takes our ability to focus and concentrate. So in schools, they would not perform well because they're all the time stressed. They are just in a different zone. So yeah, you would find them in all sort of concerns. This is why it's very important that we empower our women so that in case those kids at least have a mother, at least have some significant figure left in their life.
Right.
Right? So this is why we encourage that women are leaving, they need to take the kids along, and government supports them, both women and the kids both, and try to keep them together.
Now, another question that I have for you, I'm sorry, when it comes to like the solution that we've been discussing in regards to like a lot of these cases, and I'm pretty sure these are the most aggressive or violent cases that you're dealing with. But I want to talk about some of these cases where leaving the home is not the option, but actually maybe going through some sort of therapy or some sort of like couples counseling or something of that sort. What are some of these tactics that maybe we can revisit those, because I feel like it's becoming a little bit of a like I feel like if we start applying this, it's like the whole community is going to just end up being like, okay, we're out buying for the office, right? So I want to get into a point where how do the women themselves empower themselves to a point where they can actually take control of the abuse that they're receiving and actually completely stop it, so that they don't have to take the step of getting out of the house. They're actually saying like, listen, this is enough. This is how we're going to go forward. And then how do they do that?
Yeah. See, nobody wants to leave their house in the first incident, because we are talking about very extreme situations where people have to leave the house. Home is safety. Home is comfort. So that is very extreme steps. I think the first step is to, again, I would say, start a conversation and voice out your concern nicely. Say, hey, this is how I feel when you called on me the other day when we had your parents over dinner. You could have told me nicely that, hey, I need to put more salt in XYZ thing. Like those small things. You could have told me nicely. You could have pulled me in a corner and have spoken to me. So sometimes a woman actually needs to educate the men, see, this is how I feel. Because for him, those behaviors are maybe an okay pattern. So she needs to take this initiative and express her feelings. See, this is not okay actually. This is different. I felt humiliated. I felt sad. I felt upset. And perhaps if this goes on, I may not be able to respect you and love you the way I love you now. So let's work on it. Let's talk about it, and let's make sure this doesn't happen. Sometimes one-time conversation doesn't help, because you need to constantly give reminders until it goes into his head and it just sinks into him. So that is the first thing, conversation. I've also seen people using their trusted friends to talk to their partners, because sometimes we listen to our friends more than our partners listen to their best friends more than they listen to us. But this needs to be done respectfully. We cannot hurt their ego saying that, oh, I just went over your back and spoke to your friend about it. So again, conversation at various level, one-on-one, get somebody older, trusted older involved, get a friend involved, have that conversation. And if it doesn't work, then you need to escalate it to the next level, where perhaps let's have marriage counseling and let's see if we can talk with somebody who is neutral, who is third party, who is not your friend, not my friend, and let's listen to each other neutrally.
Sure.
And marriage counseling, relationship counseling works. It works, I tell you. Sure. A couple of sessions and it works.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, yeah. Just before we continue, for anyone watching, we have a Slido link. The what is it called? The code for it is 786-110. Again, the code is 786-110 for Slido.com. If you have any questions, feel free to submit them. We would love to have them answered.
Okay, so taking a look at this topic from a youth perspective, somebody who's, say, for example, at an older age, for example, 18 to 24, and they notice that, okay, my mother's been domestically abused or my father's been domestically abused. What steps can they take as the child or as the son or as the daughter in creating an intervention for their parents?
This is really tough on them. Really, really, really tough on them. First of all, they're already dealing with their age issues. So like teens and youth already have their own issues to deal with, and on top of that, they have to deal with these issues. I would suggest that speak to a counselor in the school or pick up the hotline and have a conversation with them.
So I know that when it comes to like telling somebody from an outside source about the domestic violence that your parents are going through, a lot of times the first option from somebody from the school district is Children's Aid Society. Like right away they'll be like, okay, I'm gonna call Children's Aid Society and they'll intervene. And I've seen from working in the foster care system, I've seen that, like Azhar said, these kids don't have the best upbringing. So is there another way rather than going, seeing, talking to the school board or talking to a counselor that maybe we can use or?
So when I answered the question, I had that age group 16 and above in mind.
Okay, yeah.
Where my understanding was they're grown up enough to help their parents come up with a solution. So this is why I said pick up a hotline, discuss the situation, and they're gonna advise you what you need to do.
Okay.
Like we can also advise, but what happens? First of all, they need to deal with the emotional turmoil. They need to vent out. They need to vent out and come to terms themselves with what's happening in the house, and until they process that internally, they cannot help their parents out, because remember, they're in a very stressful condition. That's why the helpline is also going to help them emotionally and then provide them tool to support their parents. Where Children's Aid Society get involved is when the child is at risk. So if they believe that a child is being hit, abused, neglected, and not fed properly, is not being able to sleep properly, his basic needs are denied, then CAS comes in. Somehow we carry the misconception that anything we report CAS is going to be in our home in 10 minutes. It doesn't work that way. Yes, they do get involved if a child protection complaint is made, because that is their mandate. They have to follow up. But their first aim, their first option is to support the child within the setup of the family. So I have worked with families where there have been conflict, and CAS, as what CAS has done, CAS help provide funding or connected parents to the resources where they talk about family as a unit. Right, so they talk about how to have better relationship with their friends and how with themselves as a couple, and how to support kids to maintain healthy relationships in the house. And this is all done in the house. They don't pick their kids. Workers come, do a family consultation within the safety of their houses. CAS would try their best to reconcile and save the house within the boundaries of the house. And if it doesn't work, then they take the kids out of the house. So it's a very big conception that if we call CAS, it's going to be against the kids. No, sometimes it's going to really work in their favor. Okay. Yeah. Lots of clients I have, they have family support workers coming in. Even I work for a local agency in Durham, Durham Mental Health Services. We do have a family program where we support families to help the client. Like, so if, let's say, if I am in trouble, maybe my parents would get a lot of support as to how to help me. So the idea is family is unification. Don't think that they're going to come and they're going to take away the child. Sometimes that call is in their best interest. Right? And those calls are always anonymous. They come, they check. If they feel there are concerns, they would stay. If they feel there are no concerns, they would say bye, because they also don't want extra workload on them. So, yeah.
Just on a bit of a tangent, I suppose. So I think we may have this misconception that the domestic violence primarily occurs perhaps in marriages that were arranged, for example, right? Versus love marriages, right? As we have that dichotomy within our community. So can you elaborate a bit on that idea?
No. I have seen it across. It happens in arranged marriages, it happens in love marriages, it happens within an engaged relationship where we are just engaged. It helps in a relationship where people are just seeing each other, have started seeing each other, and yet there is domestic violence. Now, can we believe if somebody is just seeing each other once every 2 weeks and still being subjected to domestic violence? I've seen those cases as well. Wow. So despite the nature of the relationship, if somebody somebody wants to abuse other partner, they would do it. Like, no matter how old is a relationship, no matter what is the nature of relationship, abuse would happen. Yeah, it's across. It's across.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Another question is, now that Corona is happening and people are under quarantine, do you think there was a rise in the number of domestic abuse cases against children or females as well? In regards to, like, just because of the fact that people are home all the time, stress is higher because of that?
Yeah. Yeah, I feel the numbers have gone up substantially. Remember when these people were out at work, like when the abusers with the partner who is being violent, when he or she goes out to work, 8 hours of work and then 2 hours of commute, that 10 hours is when he's out of the house, and that is the time when people can just relax, find some comfort, and just have a break from that stressful situation. But now when people are being in house all the time, there is no break. There's just no break. And remember, our stress levels have gone up. It's financial stress, it's stress of uncertainty, it's fear of getting ill. We don't know if we're going to go back to our work. We don't know what is going to happen to our economy. That stress level has added to a lot of family conflicts. I won't say violence in particular, but the conflicts have gone high. And then sometimes I say jokingly that husband and wife partners never stayed too much together. Like at least 10 hours they were away, and then 10 hours they were sleeping, or 8 hours they were sleeping. So there were few hours that they were together. Now they're together 24 hours. So obviously there has to be some all sort of things.
Even in a normal relationship, you're always going to have some sort of conflict, but then recognizing when that conflict is not just conflict anymore and it becomes domestic abuse is, I think, what we have.
Yeah, when it goes on to the next level where there is no respect, so yeah, then we need to really give it a thought as to which direction is this relationship going in actually.
A question that I had in regards to, like, basically punishing your child, right? Because I believe domestic abuse that happens towards children happens under the guise of punishing the child, I believe, right? Most of the time. So now the question comes down to, like, Indian Pakistani communities, even like if we look back into the 50s over here, white individuals would do the same thing, which is basically they would slap the child, regardless if it's on the face or if it's anywhere else. But there used to be a physical form of a punishment that used to happen. Now that whole punishment is now considered wrong, and you shouldn't be doing it and whatnot. Now the question comes, what, in your professional opinion, is the best way to actually punish your child? Having, like, said that, like, is slapping your child something that, if, for example, if it's done, would that always be considered domestic abuse, or sometimes do you think that it's actually maybe a little bit of a more aggressive form of punishing your child, but not something that can be or like, like considered a domestic abuse case?
Yeah.
Again, I'm going to talk about Canada's, because that's the rule of the land, right? So if you do that as per Canadian law, then it's a CAS call.
Right.
So if you slap a child, it's considered abuse, physical abuse.
Yeah.
That's pretty much a CAS call. Now, because we are Indians and we are Pakistanis, our systems are a little bit different, and we do not consider this as a form of violence. And our kids are also, they would feel sad for a while, and then
we're fine with it.
They are fine with it. Fine, yes, but then there are psychological effects. We all know if you hit on the slap, the minute somebody touches our cheek, there is a sensation, because it hits our self-esteem through this part of our body. It's all connected. All the vibrations are connected from this part of our body. If we hit here, our face is red. It hits our self-esteem. So that is another conversation that we can have. It's not okay to slap a child, but then yes, we have done it, and our kids are okay with that, and they accept this form of punishment. However, what is more wiser, I would say, timeouts. Because that just gives them that, okay, maybe I pushed the wrong button, or maybe I took it to a level where it was just too much and it was unacceptable. So that's why they have given me timeout. Timeout is a time where you think actually as to what you have done. A timeout cannot be 2 hours long. It can be 15-20 minutes, when you give them enough time to think about it, bring them back to the table and have a small conversation about it, that this is not acceptable. What others, so yeah, that's one thing. Some of the parents do the best thing. They take away the screen times.
Yeah.
It always works. You never go wrong with that thing.
So about the parents that don't want to give the screen in the first place, right? Like, it's like,
I would like to meet those parents. Like, how have they done that kind of parenting where they just don't give any screen? I would like to meet those
years
parents.
ago, right?
There were no screens.
There were no
50 years
screens
ago, right?
50 years ago, so we like it's. I don't know. I'm not a parent yet, so I'm just saying like there's a lot of parents that are pushing that new movement of like saying, you know what, we're not going to be giving our child a screen,
Yeah.
and we'll have to deal with the consequence of basically having the child like like dealing with the child and being more attentive to it. But at the same time, it helps them grow. I'm not sure of the exact science behind it, but I'm sure there's something there.
I would agree, like too much screen time is not helpful, and this is totally a different conversation that we are having. But in all fairness, you see, we are in our house all the time, kids are in the house all the time, they are also missing a regular schedule. They were at school, they had playgrounds, they had friends. Now they have taken our playgrounds away, we have taken their friends away, like not intentionally, but this is how it is. So they need something to keep them entertained. And if I take the responsibility of keeping my busy 24/7, this is draining me as well. So I need some time to myself as well in order to have my own mental well-being. So just imagine from this point, if I am working 24/7, I'm exhausted. What am I going to do? I'm going to strike back, shout, scream. So I would say it's a lesser evil. Give a few hours so that they are happy too, and then we also find some peace. Now, I'm not advocating screen time, but I'm saying sometimes, because these are unusual times, our strategies have to be different too.
Sure. I think we were discussing this yesterday, where we're talking about the concept of me time is sort of lost in our Indo-Pakistani communities, where it's like, okay, we have time for, like, especially if you're living in a joint family, it's like even having us time with your wife and yourself is something that like people don't understand, like our parents don't understand, because I don't think that was even a concept that was really delivered to them as something being important. So for us, I think one of the things that we should start focusing on, we were discussing actually, like even sometimes like preventative methods could be like just setting boundaries for yourself, where if there's other individuals that are in your house that you're dealing with, make sure that you either close a door and be like, listen, once the door is closed, you don't come into our area. This means this is our time. And then when we open the door, you're free to come, or whatever it is. So the same way, it's like maybe setting those boundaries will really help us in like living in a joint family, because I think a lot of our kids, especially because of the financial situations, or just because of the fact that housing market is obviously we cannot afford houses anyways, right? So basically, at this point, I think like we do need to come up with some strategies in regards to how do we live in a joint family, because there's one thing where domestic abuse may actually be triggered by not just the spouse or the parent, but also the grandparent or the mother and father-in-law, right? So this is something like, especially when it comes to the ego and whatnot, it's like, okay, she spoke to me in front of my parents. Now I have to retaliate back and make sure that she knows, and my parents should know that I've punished her. And it's like, it's not about like what I feel anymore. It's about the fact that, oh, I have to do it to impress my mom and dad, for example. So it's like we need to sort of set up those boundaries where, like I don't know, like if you remember yesterday we were talking about even to a point where like we tell each other, like if your parents say, for example, like your wife did this, I don't like it, right? And then she wants to discuss, like your mother or your father would like to discuss like how you should punish her for it, or any of that sort of thing. How would you react to it, right? And I think the best way to react to that, in my opinion, is to basically just be like, I'll deal with it. Don't worry, right? You don't say, yes, I will tell her, or no, I won't tell her. You just say, I'll deal with it. And then when you deal with your wife, when she says something about your mother, then you say, I'll deal with it. So in that sense, it's almost like sometimes too much communication can be a bad thing as well, where if we tell one person one thing and the other, like then they start getting that power. It's like, oh, or even complaining as well, right? It's like when we complain about, oh, I don't like how my wife does this or how my mother does this. Now it gives that person a ticket to be like, oh, she's doing it. He doesn't like it. Therefore, I will attack her for doing that. So I think these are some of the things that.
Sometimes we just need to put off those little fires before they just become a big thing out of it, right? So this is very good. Like tackle everybody individually, make them feel valued, make them feel heard. So sit with them 10 minutes, listen to their side of the story. Okay, mom, I'll take care of the situation. You don't worry. And then go to her. Okay, mom, I'm going to take care of the situation. you don't worry, things like that. So
Mhm.
small things. But I want to come back to the point that you made, self-care. Very, 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 very important. In current times, with a level of stress, with the high demand of our life, with the fast pace of life, we cannot survive if we are not setting our boundaries and not taking out time for self-care.
Mhm.
Just day before yesterday, we were having this conversation when somebody said, oh, spending some time in a spa or getting some eyebrows done or buying a new hijab is a waste of money. Yes, sometimes we don't have extra money, but still this is important.
Mhm.
Because we try to take out money for everything which we think is important. But when it comes to self-care, we don't have it because we don't think that is important.
Mhm.
You know, it's about tweaking, because from our cultures like us, we are not taught to take self-care of ourselves. Self-care is selfishness to us.
Yeah, exactly.
And I come from the same background, but living in Canada and coping up with the pace of this lifestyle, I've come to realize that if I don't take care of myself, I just cannot survive.
Yeah.
Right? Now, self-care doesn't have to, like, it doesn't have to spend like doing nails or doing expensive thing in a spa. Just going out and walking 10 minutes
Mhm.
is self-care.
Mhm.
Sitting in your backyard with a cup of coffee while you're enjoying sun is self-care.
Mhm.
So when we think of self-care, we think about those expensive holidays in Jamaica. No, those little things that makes us happy is self-care.
Mhm.
And it could be anything: picking up a phone and talking to a friend, watching a good movie, walking on the streets, sitting in Starbucks and having a cup of coffee. Anything, big or small, is self-care. You need to take out some time every day for that. Next week, I'm doing 2 sessions on self-care, by the way.
Yeah.
It has to be any small thing, but regularly. That has to be a part of your routine. Like we do namaz, that's for our soul, right? We do it every day. No matter how busy we are, we don't miss that.
Mhm.
We need to do self-care equally. It's equally important. We as a family, we walk out every day from 6 to 9. So we don't walk for 3 hours. We are out of the house 6 to 9 every day.
Mhm.
We just walk in a park. We sit by the beach. We do anything. We are out of the house, anything. And my kids know that it's important for mom's mental health. So they wouldn't object.
Mhm.
They know if they mess with that time, they're doomed. They're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to bring things back a little bit full circle. I know you mentioned creating safety plans for some of your clients. So some people who don't have the resources, who don't necessarily need to talk to a counselor, or who don't need to, pick up the phone and talk to someone, how can they create a safety plan for themselves? In the case where, okay, I understand my emotions, I'm going through stress right now. What should I do? You know what I mean? So what are some of the steps we can take to create a sort of a safety plan for ourselves?
So if you could just explain a little bit, safety plan for exactly which situation? So safety plan for where there is a threat to life is going to be different. Safety plans where kids are involved, it's going to be different.
So,
What kind of safety
like
plan are we talking about?
Like I mentioned, like people who don't necessarily have a need to talk to a counselor or go through interventions, somebody who's just going through just stress, just going through a little bit of depression, some things maybe like they can do or create a safety plan for themselves to say, okay, I'm being triggered right now. What do I need to do? Do I need to leave the room? And then maybe they can have this safety plan. They can write it down and have it somewhere where it's visible, so that when they do go through that emotion, they can refer to it right away.
So it's not, I don't think like he's talking about in the sense of like having that passport to money. It's more of like a,
Exactly.
So those plans are called wellness plans.
Wellness plan, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At my work, we do with this all the clients.
Yeah.
The clients, and we ask them to put it somewhere, either on a fridge or in a bedroom or buy their favorite book so that they can refer it to everywhere. It's very important that we have that wellness plan. So there are few components of a wellness plan that we need to have. Write down on a piece of paper what your strengths are. So that when there is a time when you're feeling low, you can look at that paper and you can see, oh, I am cheerful. I am a very friendly person. I am somebody who is super bubbly. I am somebody who enjoys coffee. I am somebody who likes going for walks. So write down your strengths. Because sometimes when we're feeling low, it doesn't come automatically to our head. So we need reminders. So first of all, write down what your strengths are. People can be passionate about arts and craft. People can be anything, right? So write down your strengths, then write down your triggers. So what are some things that normally puts you off? When my kids answers me back, when my husband screams at me, when my mom-in-law is not very friendly to me, or when my boss calls me and gives me extra work, or when I'm asked to work on a Saturday, whatever can be your trigger has to be written down too, right? And then with the trigger, you write down what helps you with that trigger. So if it's step 1, where you're feeling a little bit low, can I take a small break and go for a walk? Can I do some deep breathing? Can I drink a glass of water and get myself hydrated, right? Can I put on my favorite TV show, any stand-up comedian show, and listen that for 5-7 minutes? That is going to cheer my mood up. Can I eat a snack, something healthy that's going to lift my energy, boost my energy, right? So your strengths, your triggers, and what helps you, right? Have a list of whom to call in case if you really need help. So can I call my parents? Can I call my friend to talk to if I'm in a dip? Can I call my, I don't know, my son, my daughter, my manager, who would understand, who would listen to me for 5 minutes, not in a non-judgmental way? So have those names and those phone numbers ready so that you can just dial right away. And then have some extreme resources ready in case if I need an ambulance. So 911 is there. In case if I am really sinking, I need to talk to a helpline or a crisis line to lift me up. Or have your family doctor's phone number ready so that you can call, or at least somebody else can call, depending on what the situation is. Just making any sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So wellness plan is for each of us whenever we need it, and safety plan is for people who are in grave situations where they may have to exit or may have to save themselves physically in order to avoid self-harm or avoid harm to themselves. So I'm going to quickly run through the safety planning as well, if in case people need this. Always have a bag ready in which you have your passport or your landing documents or your PR card, whatever your status is, some money, keys to your car, if possible. So in case if you have to leave, you can quickly exit. Make sure you have some clothes and your kids' clothes ready. A cell phone in your bag, which is always charged, so that in case you have to call, you know where to call from. And a backup plan as to where would you go. So the minute you leave the house, there has to be a place where you have to go. So either a friend's place, either a shelter. So have those numbers ready where you know where are you going to go. Because you can't operate while being on a street. You have to be in a safe place where you find where you can have some time to bring your head together, and then you plan the next step. So plan the first step in your safety planning, and then from there, people is going to help you do the second step planning. So always have some numbers of shelters handy if you are in that kind of situation.
One more, I think informational basis is, because we're a bunch of guys here. I think it's a good thing to sort of point out certain things that we as men can do in regards to assisting maybe whoever it is that may be going through this. Like, for example, we have sisters and whoever else. How can we be of assistance? Certain things that maybe we can do. In terms of even the fact that if I get a call, I want to be able to be prepped in a sense that I should be able to have that conversation with whoever it is that's calling me, and then be able to assist them in a good way without making them feel like they're being judged or anything of that sort.
Please listen to her story. Please listen to what she's saying. Make a sense of what she's asking for. Is she just looking to vent out? Then just talking and listening helps. But if you sense a danger, act accordingly. If you feel, okay, she's at a fear of being hurt, then it's obviously a 911 call. But if you feel that she needs some mental health support, some emotional support, just to give her that strength, then maybe just provide a number of a crisis hotline, because you guys are not professionals, so to deal with it. So it has to be referred to a professional, right? So try to refer to a proper channel, either a crisis line or a hotline or a shelter number where she could get the required help. Or at least connect with somebody in the community who is in a position to help her.
Sure.
So Sister Sukaina, I just want to thank you for giving us insight into this topic that has so much stigma surrounded around it. I think this was a great platform to have this conversation. And this was a great start to many, many conversations that may happen later on as well. So just being mindful of time, I just want to thank you. I want to thank Azra, I want to thank Nabil for asking the questions and for you answering those questions. Inshallah, we'll have a lot more conversations like this in the future.
Inshallah. And thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Jazakallah.
So just want to give everyone information that inshallah, with depending on the success of this podcast and the future ones, like we'll continue to do them. So if you guys keep liking and subscribing to our channel, follow us on all the social media links that are down below. We can go ahead and continue to make this content. Obviously, we're pushing out a lot of different programs and events that I'm sure you guys have seen if you guys are following our stuff. Just to shout out a couple, tomorrow there's a Kahoot challenge. We do Sunday sessions as well with other ulama, and we also have there's just multiple things that we're doing. 3 videos a week that we're dropping on YouTube as well. So there's a lot of things that we're offering to you guys, and inshallah, if you guys can take advantage of it, we can continue to make that content. Give the committee that motivation to continue to keep going forward, inshallah. Thank you so much. Jazakallah.